Word out of Ashburn is the Commanders let the exact center who was going to fix this O-line walk right out the door, and it's already showing up on tape against the Ravens. Lake Lewis Jr. says it was a handshake deal that fell apart at the last second. But that's not the only thing moving. Chig Okonquo slid in quiet and might be Jayden's next real weapon, but there's a reason the fan base ain't sold yet. And Dan Quinn is sitting on the real plan for Sonny Styles, the number 7 overall pick, a chess move that could flip this whole defense. Raise hail. Sit down for this one. What came out this week confirms the Commanders were centimeters away from solving one of this franchise's oldest problems, and they let it slip for a difference of a few dollars. Let's build the full context here, because a lot of people only saw the headline and didn't grasp how big this problem actually is. This all starts on August 5th during a one-on-one drill against Odafe Oweh. Laramie Tunsil, the left tackle Washington, had just made the highest paid player at his position in history with a 2-year, $60.2 million extension. Tears his triceps just like that in a random preseason drill. And the medical outlook is brutal. He's expected to miss most, if not all, of the 2026 season. That hit alone would have been enough drama to fill a month of content. But here's what's got me fired up today. Washington had to move Brandon Coleman back to left tackle, a spot he played as a rookie, but not where the original plan had him lined up. Josh Connerly Jr. stays locked in on the right side. And as if that wasn't enough, the line still has a massive hole at center because Julian Good-Jones was only ever meant to be a temporary patch while the front office looked for something better, and that's exactly where Tyler Linderbaum comes in. The base situation, what actually happened with Linderbaum? According to insider Lake Lewis Jr. on the podcast Rambling with Rio, the Commanders had, in his words, a handshake agreement with Linderbaum before the Raiders stepped in with an offer nobody in the league could match, the richest center contract in NFL history. Once that number hit the table, there was no human way Linderbaum was telling Las Vegas no. That kind of money changes generations. Now, I want to be fair to Adam Peters on one point. I don't blame him for refusing to enter a bidding war that would have blown up the salary structure of the entire roster. A smart GM doesn't pay the panic price, but is massive. The uncomfortable question nobody's asking the front office is this. If you knew there was a real risk of losing Linderbaum in an auction, where was the backup plan? Because the answer, as Lewis described it himself, is chilling in how simple it is. There wasn't one. The contingency idea apparently amounted to, quote, letting Nick Allegretti be your backup. And now Allegretti, who's been dealing with a calf issue for a good chunk of camp, is suddenly being pushed into the starting center role for an offense that literally depends on Jayden Daniels having time to breathe in the pocket. The real problem, the line is already showing it on the field, and this isn't some theoretical front office concern. This is showing up right now in joint practices against the Ravens. Several reporters who were there described Washington's offensive line work as possibly its worst showing in years. In years, man, not weeks, years. Think through the entire domino effect. You lose your star left tackle, you move your starting guard to a new position under pressure. Your original plan at center falls apart because of a bidding war you didn't see coming. And you end up playing an injured man at a position that isn't even his natural one, protecting a third-year quarterback who's just starting to show his real ceiling. That's the exact cocktail that ruins a season before it even starts. Washington did react, and I'll give them credit for that. They signed DJ Humphries, a former Pro Bowler, on a 1-year deal to add tackle depth after the Tunsil injury. Humphries has 101 career starts, the vast majority with Arizona, and he comes in as a veteran competing with Coleman. That's a reasonable move, but it's a tackle move. It solves absolutely nothing at center. The Linderbaum problem is exactly as open as it was before Humphries signed. My personal take, and here I'm going to be direct because that's what these videos are for. I think this exposes something deeper than just, we lost a guy in free agency. It exposes a risk assessment failure in the front office. When you identify a player as your top priority at a critical position, you can't build your entire plan assuming that handshake deal holds up against a historic offer from another team. Free agency doesn't run on loyalty, it runs on money, and Adam Peters has been in this league long enough to know that better than anyone. I'm not saying Peters is a bad GM, to be clear. This same front office built the roster that got us to a conference title game not that long ago. But in this specific window with Jayden Daniels in year 3 and an offense that desperately needs protection to fully take off, not having a real contingency plan at center is, to me, the most costly mistake of the entire offseason. More costly than the Tunsil injury itself, because you can't control an injury. You can control whether you have a backup plan. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. Maybe Allegretti gets healthy on that calf, settles into the role, and this line ends up being functional by the time September rolls around. But if this offense starts the regular season struggling in protection and Daniels ends up absorbing hits he shouldn't have to absorb, I'm going to call it out clearly. This was visible back in August, and it was visible because of exactly this story. What this means for the fans, for us as fans, this translates into one simple word: anxiety. It's not just will Jayden be healthy in week 1 anymore. Now it's will he even have time to throw the ball, healthy or not? Every successful rush against this hastily rebuilt line is a direct threat to the health of the most important quarterback this franchise has had in 2 decades. And that, man, isn't fan hyperbole. That's straight up football math. Line protection and quarterback health are directly connected always in any scheme under any coordinator. So yeah, it hurt reading that we were one handshake away from solving this, but now it's on Dan Quinn and David Blue to figure out the puzzle with the pieces they've got left. And honestly, right now, I trust the coaching staff a lot more than I trust the front office's risk management on this one. I needed that breather after talking about offensive lines and broken deals, so let's get into something that genuinely has me excited about this offense in 2026, and that something has a name: Chig Okonquo. Washington brought him in through free agency after his time in Tennessee on a 3-year, $27 million deal, and honestly, the fan reaction was lukewarm when it was announced. He wasn't the big name we were all screaming for in the receiver room, but listen to this, fam. Outside of Terry McLaurin, the next most reliable fantasy option on this entire offensive roster might be this exact tight end. Why? Because Okonkwo's athletic profile fits perfectly with what a young offensive coordinator like David Blau wants to run. There's a clear pattern across the league right now. Young play callers want to get their most athletic players the ball in space. Tight end screens, short drags, quick hit slants designed to let a guy with Okonkwo's explosiveness turn a 3-yard catch into a 20-yard gain. In PPR format, that's pure gold, but beyond fantasy, in real football, that means space manipulation, leverage after the catch, and a matchup advantage that opposing coordinators are going to have to game plan for every single week. And here's a piece of context I think matters. Daniels already showed he knows how to use a veteran tight end. His rapport with Zach Ertz during his time in Washington was real. Ertz put up solid numbers even at 33 because Daniels felt comfortable finding him up the seam. Okonkwo doesn't bring that veteran feel for leverage yet, but he's no exaggeration, way more athletic than Ertz was during that stretch. Whether it's the dink and dunk short route tree or attacking vertically down the middle, there's real upside here. There's another layer to this story I really like. As a season-long narrative, Okonkwo is returning to the Maryland area where he played his college ball. That homecoming, combined with the fan base's hunger for real offensive weapons after a painful 2025 where the front office moved on from veterans like Bobby Wagner to rebuild around Daniels, gives Okonkwo extended grace from us as fans. He wasn't the flashiest name on the market, but he's undeniably a player you can call a real offensive weapon, and that's already more than we had at this position a year ago. My honest take, and I want to be clear about this, I don't think Okonkwo finishes the season as a top 5 tight end in the league. That ceiling probably isn't there yet. But the floor is solid, and the medium-term upside is worth chasing because if Blau uses him the way the league-wide pattern with young play callers suggests he will, Okonkwo can be exactly the kind of third-level weapon that turns 3rd and 4 into an automatic first down, and on an offense that desperately needs reliable options beyond McLaurin and Diggs, that's worth its weight in gold. And to close things out, let's talk about the chess move Dan Quinn is running with Sonny Styles, because I think a good chunk of the criticism floating around social media right now is honestly lazy. Quick context for anyone not following this closely: after a truly brutal 2025 on defense, Quinn overhauled that unit hard, and the centerpiece of that rebuild was drafting linebacker Sonny Styles with the number 7 overall pick in the 2026 draft. We're talking about an extremely high capital investment in a single position. During the preseason, Styles took some heat after Josh Dobbs beat him on a touchdown run, and that's where I want to pause because I think that take is aimed at the wrong thing. Quinn himself came out and confirmed something important. The coaching staff hasn't shown anyone, not us fans, not the opponents Washington is about to face in Week 1, how they actually plan to use Styles during the regular season. The preseason version was intentionally vanilla, a traditional conservative linebacker asked to read, react, flow to the ball, and make the tackle, nothing more. And that restraint, bro, deserves respect. Washington doesn't want to hand the rest of the league free information. Are they going to use him as an A, B, or C gap rusher, line him up on the edge outside the tackle in a wide 9, green dog him, sticking him on a running back before turning him loose to rush the second the back stays in to block? The versatility for an athlete of his caliber inside Quinn's defense is enormous, and hiding it through the entire preseason, even if it frustrates impatient fans, is the correct move from a pure strategy standpoint. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat the full reality of this defense because that would be dishonest on my part. The problems go way beyond one player or one new scheme. Washington dug itself into a hole with years of failed defensive line drafts, guys who aren't even on the roster anymore. Those misses kept the front office from filling out the rest of the defense. The secondary is still a mess of accumulated errors. They're still trying to piece that group together. Linebacker is probably the deepest group on the entire defensive roster right now, but the defensive line is still just a collection of big bodies without a real guaranteed 10-sack pass rusher. For this defense to work, all 11 guys have to do their job on every single snap. There's no individual star capable of carrying the unit by himself, and that worries me more than any single criticism of Sonny Styles on one preseason play. The realistic expectation for 2026, being objective here, is a passable defense. In the optimistic scenario, a group that can beat bad offenses and suffocate units that are already struggling. But the harsh reality is this defense, as it stands today, isn't built to keep pace with the Rams, the Seahawks, or any of the explosive offenses Washington's going to face on its schedule. That means Blau's offense is going to have to carry more weight than any of us would like to admit. And that brings me straight to Dallas. That rivalry hits different this season. Just 2 years ago, Washington looked like the team on the rise in the NFC East, while the Cowboys were drowning in bad contracts. The roles flipped. If Dallas hangs 40 points on Washington this season, that stops being just another loss and becomes a genuine panic button moment for the whole organization. My final read here, I trust Quinn's plan with Styles because it makes real tactical sense and because a coach with his track record doesn't hide information without a concrete reason. But that trust in one player doesn't make me ignore that the rest of the defensive unit still has holes that not even the best version of Sonny Styles can cover alone. If Quinn maximizes what he's got, a league average defense is within reach. If the same 2025 problems resurface, no amount of scheme creativity with Styles is going to say, that's everything I've got for you today, fam. And look, we're closing out with mixed feelings like pretty much always with this team. The Linderbaum thing hurts. It hurts knowing we were that close to solving a years-old problem and it's slipped away in a bidding war we didn't see coming. But there are real reasons to be hyped, too. Chig Okonquo could be exactly the quiet weapon this offense needed, and Dan Quinn is running a chess game with Sonny Styles that, if it works out, could give us the defensive surprise of the year. This franchise keeps building, keeps fighting, and Jayden Daniels keeps being the main reason every single one of us turns the screen on week after week. Raise hail always. If this video gave you something, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments, do you think the offensive line stabilizes in time for Week 1, or are we in for some early season pocket problems? I want to read every single answer. See you in the next one.